The internationally recognized Libyan government based in Tripoli is not only battling a deadly virus, but also illegal militias loyal to warlord Khalifa Haftar. His year-long assault on the capital has left scores of civilians dead. But now the government of national accord is on the offensive, advancing on a strategic airbase just southwest of Tripoli. Haftar and his forces have used Watiya airbase to launch attacks on the capital and surrounding areas since 2014. His recent defeats on the battlefield, largely thanks to Turkey's support for the GNA, has earned the ire of the United Arab Emirates, the warlord's main backer. Turkey's foreign ministry hit back, saying the UAE has pursued destructive policies in the region. Libya hasn't had a functioning government since the overthrow of longtime ruler Muammar Gaddafi back in 2011. The GNA, which controls the capital, has been battling Haftar's forces, who are largely based in the country's eastern city, Benghazi. So, are we at a turning point in the Libyan civil war? Is warlord Haftar starting to see his international support wane? To answer that and break it all down, joining me now from Ankara is Murat Aslan, who is a faculty member at Hasan Kalyoncu University and a researcher at the SETA Foundation, and Guma el Gamaty, the special envoy of the UN-recognized Libyan Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj. He joins us from London. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. Haftar's losses in Libya sparked a war of words between Turkey and the United Arab Emirates. The Emiratis accused Turkey of interfering in Arab affairs in Libya, and that was met with a harsh reaction from Ankara. Ankara said it was the United Arab Emirates that has been undermining peace efforts, not only in Libya, but in Syria, Yemen, and the Horn of Africa. So, Juma, let me begin with you. What could you tell us about the timing of the UAE statement and what's happening in Libya at the moment?
Well, first of all, what's happening in Libya is that the balance of military power is changing significantly and positively in favor of the GNA, the recognized government in Libya. Since 25th of March, about 7 weeks ago, the GNA has declared the military operation Peace Storm to actually push away Haftar forces who are shelling Tripoli every day, killing civilians, children, women, and destroying hospitals and other buildings. Only last night, there was very heavy shelling in Tripoli, about 9 or 10 civilians killed, many more injured, and even international embassies have been targeted yesterday. Both shells fell near the Turkish embassy and the Italian embassy. So this aggression, these war crimes need to be stopped, and Haftar forces need to be pushed back. And this is why the GNA has declared the Peace Storm operation on the 25th of March. It's going very well. The GNA has recaptured many strategic places which Haftar used to take, especially in the coast west of Tripoli.
Are these gains by the GNA and its allies sustainable, you think?
Absolutely, I think they are. And now al-Watiya airbase, which is a very significant airbase, 160 kilometers southwest of Tripoli, is now being surrounded.
Yes.
And Tarhuna is a major stronghold for Haftar, 50 kilometers south of Tripoli, is being surrounded as well. All this change in dynamics and in balance of power in favor of the GNA obviously came as a result of this strategic cooperation and alliance between the GNA and Turkey, which was as a result of the military cooperation signed back in November last year. So
okay, I'm going to cut you here, Juma, because I want to pose this question to Murat Aslan. How has, actually he just mentioned it, but how has the Turkish support changed the balance of power in the conflict?
Ayşe, as you know, once Turkey offered the support, the design of this support was announced as, training, mentorship, and also a kind of material support. But after the embargo, Turkey delivered nothing. But before embargo, we know that Turkey delivered some assets. But we know that there's a potential at the west of Libya. Under the legitimate government, there are many militias, many military groups under the authority of Ministry of Interior or Ministry of Defense. and Turkey succeeded to organize them. That's the biggest support from Turkey. The second thing, I think there was no objective in Libya's forces, but Turkey designed a kind of structure over there that will offer them a common objective, a common methodology to beat or defeat Haftar's forces. We know that there are some vulnerabilities of Haftar. For instance, Metali Salafis supported Haftar at the very first instance of the overall conflicts. But once legitimate government captured the military initiative on the ground, that means now even the militias on the ground and also international actors questioned how viable and reliable Haftar is. So what Turkey contributed is to impose a trust, both to Libyans and encouraged international actors to support legitimate government.
Yes. Given these current circumstances, Guma, will the United Arab Emirates, Russia, and Egypt, and Russian actually mercenaries back down, or they will further boost their support to Haftar in the coming period? What's at stake for them?
Well, I think the UAE, Egypt, France, and Russia have invested a lot in Haftar, not just now, but since 2014, 6 years of continuous support. We talk about UAE supplying drones, Chinese-made drones, supplying a lot of weapons, ammunition, logistical support, political, media, and intelligence support. And this is clearly a major investment for UAE. They want Haftar to take over power in Libya and instill a military rule so that UAE can enjoy all the benefits, economic and geopolitical benefits in Libya.
But from now on, how do you think they'll act? So, and how do you believe that the COVID-19 as well as a dramatic fall of the oil prices will impact these countries' support to Haftar?
Unfortunately, the UAE is continuing to escalate, is continuing to give major support to Haftar. After the Berlin conference, we have records of flights, daily flights from Abu Dhabi to Benghazi shipping military equipment. They've been monitoring some 6,000 tons of equipment have been coming in. Now, also UAE is organizing mercenaries from Sudan, paid by the UAE. Yesterday, we heard the American Special Envoy to Syria talking about the Assad regime in Syria sending mercenaries and also and equipment to Benghazi to Haftar, possibly paid for by the UAE. The UAE has a major airbase now east of Benghazi, some 80 kilometers east of Benghazi, called Al-Qadem airbase. If you actually put that name in Google, it will come up as the Emirati airbase in Libya. So that is the extent of how much the UAE is continuing to support Haftar and escalate things. They do not want to to back down until they feel they can succeed.
So do you think we're going to see a vicious cycle of escalation in the coming period, right?
Well, unfortunately, I think so. There have been talks of possibly Rafale fighter planes coming in and Mirage fighter planes sent by the UAE to Libya. Unfortunately, yes, we might see an escalation. Okay. However, what matters is on the ground, and I think on the ground is the GNA has the upper hand and is on the offensive, and Haftar's forces and militias are retreating. That is very important and very significant.
So, Murat, how will this impact Ankara-Moscow relations, especially after this tentative ceasefire which was reached back in January?
There are many dynamics that we can assess Russian-Turkish relations. The first leg is for sure Syria, and it's still fragile. After the agreement of Turkey and Russia on Syria, it seemed that there's nothing in Syria, but it's not a fact. Today, we experience daily attacks of both regime and also PKK, PYD against Turkish forces and also Syrian opposition. That means it's fragile. The second thing, there's actually a significant development, and it's very important on the relations between Russia and Turkey. UAE started to support and establish a link to Syria, Assad regime, and now established another bridge with Russia. That means UAE is currently supporting Russia's objectives indirectly. So it's a big development. So if you take this picture from Syria to Libya, the same is valid. Still, we see UAE providing support to militias and who are closely engaging with Russians or cooperating with
So
Russia.
what do you make of the international community's complacency towards this, both the humanitarian crisis and the violations of arms embargo in Libya, and as you've just mentioned, maybe Syria? Are they, do you think, too distracted by COVID-19?
I don't think so. COVID-19 is a fact. It challenged everything, but still we witness conflicts. On the other hand, just be aware, in the countries like Syria and Libya, COVID-19 level is not that much high, like France or Italy or Turkey. That means COVID-19 has least effect to the level of conflicts in Syria and Libya. But please, it does not mean that COVID-19 will erupt with a second wave in Libya or in Syria.
Yeah, Guma, tell us about there. Sorry to interrupt, but how pandemic affected the violence in general in Libya. Murat just said maybe there aren't many reported cases in those countries. Do you know, for example, how many people have been infected? What's the situation in the country?
Well, fortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic in Libya has been very limited so far, maybe because the country was in a way isolated. There was not much travel with the outside world and not much contact. And there have been a lockdown by the government, by the GNA since a few weeks ago. So I think we have something like 64 cases and possibly, and I think 3 deaths. And maybe out of the 64 identified cases, we only have about 34 still active. So it is now under control. There is a curfew. There is a lockdown policy and social distancing policy, and that policy is being extended. So the government is trying its best. But of course, if it does break out of control, then the government means the healthcare system might not be able to cope. But luckily, so far, things are under control and there is no big danger or major challenge.
And moving forward, do you think there will be a political solution to this conflict, or the sides will choose to solve it through fighting? What's your take on that?
Unfortunately, when we talk about a political solution, it takes 2 sides to come to the table and agree a political solution. Haftar has never, ever had any intention of sitting on the table and discussing a political solution and willing to compromise and share. Haftar has one discourse, and that is to take the total control of the country and impose his own personal rule. We've seen that declared by him from one side only last week in the east. So in that sense, how can we have a political solution with someone who's intent on controlling and taking over the whole country and controlling the whole power in his own hands? So it is, in a way, it's almost impossible. However, I think if Haftar was to be defeated, pushed back and excluded from the scene in Libya and is no longer a military threat, I think a political solution will definitely be possible, not with Haftar, but with all the other political sides in Libya. There are so many different sides in Libya on political ground, on geographical ground, on tribal ground, on ethnic ground. Different sides can sit together and agree a social contract and a political solution. But
before that, the Berlin conference was convened, and now we see the fighting is ongoing in the parts of that country. Murat, given these latest developments, as we're running out of time, could you tell us about Turkey's prospects and what it wants to achieve? And do you think that the GNA will someday set parameters for a peace process?
Turkey's objective is very clear, actually, and is announced. Legitimate government must be supported, and legitimate government must govern the overall Libya, not any individual or any militia who has a desire to be the sole man or the only power upon the country. That means there must be a democratic process, that's okay, But on the other hand, this democratic process must be within the norms of international community. If another Sisi is to be created in Libya, that means that's the red line of Turkey, because Turkey wants to see Libyan friends as a sovereign country governing themselves. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So to what extent are the United Arab Emirates, Guma, and Turkey key to what happens next into this conflict?
Well, it remains to be seen whether the UAE military support to Haftar can actually empower him to survive and stay in the scene. I think the military expert support given by Turkey to the JNA based on the military accord signed back in November is delivering positive results. I think the JNA is much stronger now, much more organized, and there is a strong will and has a wide popular support to defeat Haftar. So the dynamics as they stand now, hopefully Haftar will be defeated militarily, pushed back all the way from the west and south of Libya, and possibly from the oil crescent region as well. And then Haftar will be almost pushed out of the scene, especially militarily, and he can no longer make any political claims in Libya. And then Libyans can actually sit together and craft a political lasting solution that can stabilize the country, deliver stability, unity, respected sovereignty, and hopefully a good government, a democratic government, which the majority of the Libyan people want.
All right, gentlemen, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk. I appreciate it a lot.